Hello everybody and good afternoon. Thank you for joining us on this webinar. I'm Sue Carter. I'm a digital and communications specialist and I've been working with Stephen Priestnall and the team at oomph for a couple of years now. I have a journalist background, so my role today is to interview Stephen about oomp's new business planning support initiative, which is designed to help you as business owners and decision makers to gather key insights about your customers during this time, during the COVID-19 pandemic. After my interview with Stephen, which will last about 10 minutes, there'll also be the opportunity for me to put your questions to Stephen. So if you do have any queries about this initiative, about the process, about the follow-up, anything at all, please feel free to message us during the session. There's a Q&A feature at the bottom of your Zoom window. So if you just tap where it says Q&A, you can type in your question and we can come to those at the end of my interview with Stephen. So let's get started. Stephen, good afternoon. First of all, perhaps you can start by telling us a little bit about oomph.
Sure. oomph is a customer experience agency and we specialise in digital business. We help organisations of all types to consider and also meet the challenges of changing customer behaviours, which is becoming particularly appropriate right now, with us all changing all of our behaviours. The work ranges from strategic advisory all the way through to helping with deployment programs using many technologies that can be used to help improve customer or supporter experiences.
And so what is the initiative that we're here to talk about today that you're offering businesses and membership organisations during these uncertain times?
Well, straightforwardly, it's a survey, Sue, and it's a survey that organisations will send to their customers or their supporters or their service users, and for which we will provide the actionable insight back to the organisation. It's a 100% free service from end to end. Now, the idea is that it provides some actionable data that helps organisations start thinking about COVID-19 exit planning. It's driven by knowledge of their actual customer experiences. Our initial research indicates that no matter what organisation that you have some responsibility for, your customers, your members, your supporters are behaving very differently now and will continue to do so for the foreseeable future. In addition, all around us, the data we're seeing is really only designed to give you short or immediate term decision support. People are thinking about this week, maybe next week, are they going to make payroll? Who do they need to furlough? We want to see people starting to plan, at least in the midterm 6-month window.
So that's a really good explanation of the service, but we all have varied needs and ideas within our organisations. There will be different types of decision makers joining us on the webinar today. So thinking about that survey, what types of questions will be in there?
Well, we have a challenge to make sure that the survey works for everybody that participates. It needs to be short and it needs to be easy to complete. So we're going to make sure the questions are wholly focused on the experiences and data that are to do with the impact of COVID-19. We'll ask respondents about factors that influence adaptability, for example, technology, communications capability, both at an individual and a business level. If it's business, then size and sector of organisation, as well as asking for qualified views of the direct impact of the pandemic on themselves or their organisation. Now, we'll ask this question based on today, the here and now, and also a view of 3 months ahead and 6 months ahead. The survey will come direct from the organisation, and so you'll be asking your customers or members or supporters what they think you as an organisation can do to help them and what they perceive to be the COVID-19 impact on you as an organisation. Now, we're using a research platform which gives us a unique ability to combine both hard data, that's called quantitative data, and soft data called qualitative data with verbatim comments. And verbatim comments means we can capture quotes using the Decision Juice platform from customers and include that in the analysis. And so what I'd like to do now is, just for the participants in the webinar, can I just do a screen share and show what an exemplar consolidated report might look like? So
please do.
I'll just share screen now. So are we seeing a chart in
Yep.
front?
Yep, we're seeing that.
So what you're looking at, and I think you can see my mouse going up the vertical grid, Sue, and then along the horizontal grid.
Yep.
So this grid will appear inside the survey. So respondents in the survey will come across a question which will ask them to position themselves based on impact of COVID-19 upon them or their organisation, depending upon whether we're talking to them as a consumer or a business. And up in the top right, where it's all red, that means somebody's positioned themselves in a place where they think it has catastrophic economic and catastrophic well-being impact. Down here in the green at the bottom, it means that people are seeing either economic opportunity and or well-being opportunity. And in addition to recording their position on this grid, as they click on the grid, it'll pop up a little post-it note so they can record their comments as well. So we'll get a reason why people see themselves in this particular position. So I'll stop share for now, Sue.
Thank you for that. That's really helping to put some colour to it. It's great to see that document that you were showing us. Can you tell us a little bit more what organisations will get, what tangible documents, what information will they get after the survey?
Sure. Where the whole purpose is to try and get actionable insight to help lift people's heads out of day-to-day survival. And then think about how you can be guided by your customers, your members, service users in a mid-term planning exercise. So I'll go back and screen share that document again now, Sue, 1 second. I'll just reduce the size of it so we can see the whole document. So this is a document which we'll be pulling together as a consolidated report across all of the feedback we'll get. Individual organisations will get a subset of this data based on charts and insight unique to their organisation. So they may not get all the infographics, but they'll get the data associated with it and the insight. But we expect to be looking at data that tells us, as a perspective, how people are being impacted now, and as we can see from this chart, and through the next 6 months. And then we'll also be asking questions that help us understand how organizations can help their customers. So that might be improving delivery or e-commerce or providing some cash flow support. And then finally, I'll just increase the size so it's a bit more visible. We should get some consolidated data about overall percentages of respondents who see themselves as, for instance, thinking the organization can help lessen the impact upon them, or believing that there will be well-being opportunities that come off the back of COVID-19. It may be that the whole remote working thing becomes a positive for some organizations. So those are the sort of things we hope to be able to provide back in consolidated form. So I'll stop screen share now.
Thank you. So going through this and thinking about this service for organisations, it does make me think there are survey platforms out there that people can use. So why would an organisation choose to work with you on this opportunity and not just build something themselves?
The simple answer to that is time. There seems to be simply no time for organisations to plan or be strategic at the moment. What we can see is that we've got this perfect storm of furloughing, we've got increased illness levels, we've got the requirement for balancing homeschooling, needing to change ways of working. I was talking to a business in the charity sector who are finding they're doing most of their work between 8 at night and midnight by the time the kids have gone to bed, whilst they're juggling who does the odd 1 hour between the two partners in the daytime. And I think that's not an abnormal situation. Most organizations are now extremely time poor. So we're a customer experience agency. So we put that expertise into structuring a survey, which will be driven by customer experiences. And then we've automated the analysis, so all the organization needs to do is send an email with the link to their respondents. The platform will limit the responses, so there's no need to worry about follow-ups. The survey will close with a friendly message. If we've reached a 200 limit, then there'll be the survey is closed message going to the respondents. Now we're set up to do this. We are a customer experience agency. Most organizations are not. And we have the additional ability to use this tool, which allows us to combine soft and hard data. And then in addition, so this is something you wouldn't get as an independent organization, you'll get access to the consolidated anonymized data from this first wave, which I think in itself will be insightful for organization planning over and above your specific organization data. I think it might be helpful as well, so if I just do another quick screen share, just to show what the email could look like that organizations would send out to their customers. So I'll just screen share again, because we've had a number of questions about this. 1 second. Right, are we seeing an email format in front of us?
Yes.
Great. So I'll let the participants in the webinar just read through as I'm talking, but the purpose of this and the positioning of it is to treat this as a collaboration exercise with your customers, your members, your supporters. This is not a marketing exercise. It's not a promotion. It's not lead generation. This is, we're all in this together. Can you help us understand how the impact of COVID-19 is changing your behaviors now and in the future, and how we can help you if we're able to do so? And we're really clear that that's an important positioning to take. We'd also like to think that it came from an internal email browser through a decision maker rather than a marketing CRM email generation tool. Sometimes that might not be possible, in which case there's workarounds. It just takes a bit longer to grab the data together. So I'll stop screen share now, Sue.
Okay, thank you for that. It has occurred to me while we've been talking, you've talked about the time it takes and saving organisations time. And obviously you and your team have done a fair bit of work on this. So it sort of begs the question, why are you doing it?
Well, there's 3 reasons why we've decided to take on board this project. So first of all, we want to help. First and foremost, we want to be part of a solution to get organisations planning positively for the future. And we want that to be based on real insight from their customers and supporters or service users. If the business community accelerates its COVID-19 exit planning, then oomph indirectly benefits as part of that community, and kind of everybody rises upwards. Now also, I think this is important for us, we become part of the COVID-19 insight community, and we think that's a really positive position for oomph to take. Insight into customer behavior is very likely to be at a premium for some considerable time. And then finally, Sue, we get to showcase our platform, our technology, and our thinking, so that's got to be a good thing.
Okay, so let's think about the organisations that have joined us on the webinar, or the people that you would like to talk to. Who would this survey, this initiative, be most useful for, in your view? And in fact, who would you like to hear from?
Well, I think if you believe that understanding the impact of COVID-19 on, firstly, your customers or members or supporters, and secondly, their perception of your organisation, and you think understanding that impact of COVID-19 will help you in your planning, then it's relevant. Now, we've set up survey variants to make sure we can cover commercial organisations, membership organisations, public sector, and not-for-profit. And we've allowed for communications going direct to businesses on their behalf and then direct to members of the public. So that covers a fairly broad range of organisations, and we'd love to hear from any decision makers in those types of organisation. We're often asked about size. Does it matter about the number of respondents we can bring through? I think I said before, we're going to cap it at 200. The platform can do that for us. We'd probably normally say that less than 30 won't give you the mass insight that the Decision Juice platform can give. But I think if, for instance, you're a B2B organisation and might know your customers very well, which is who you want to send these to, then even numbers smaller than that may well still provide some useful soft insights.
Okay, so different range of organisations and people that you've mentioned there. What should those people do next if they're interested in finding out more?
Well, we're trying to manage this as streamlined as possible, Sue, because I think time is really critical. The environment is changing. Government advice is changing across most countries we're talking about sending the survey out to. So we've set up a dedicated email address which is 2020impact at oomphagency.com. I think that'll be sent out off the back of this webinar. We know, there's lots of people who know us already. We're still answering the phones, but if we can, we'd like to manage the process digitally as far as we're able to.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. Really interesting to hear more about the initiative and hopefully given our attendees on the webinar a clear picture of what the initiative involves. We're now, though, going to move to the Q&A session for everyone on the webinar. So if you do have a question, please don't forget to pop it in the Q&A box at the bottom of the Zoom. Okay, so let's move on to Q&A from the audience. So Stephen, let me start with this. We have had a little bit of a discussion about time through our interview, but how much time do you really foresee an organisation having to spend on this?
I think there's two, well, I'll preface it by saying as little as possible. All the feedback we're getting is there's very little time out there, even with a great desire to go ahead with something like this. So there's two tasks, if you like. One is sending the email out. And I think, as I've described, we want to keep that as tight as possible. And we've recommended doing that from a decision maker inside the organization's email browser, Outlook or Gmail. And then if it needs to be done through a mass email tool, then try and keep that data collation as simple as possible and the message as collaborative as possible to get the response rates up. And then finally, at the back end of the survey, when you receive the data, then there's some interpretation to do of the insight. Now, we're going to make sure there's a front page with insight that is not research analyst oriented. It's to a lay person in an organization to interpret. And then obviously we'll have the consolidated report, which will come out to everybody at the end as well.
Which kind of makes me think of another question. So there's a two-layer response from the survey. So we've got the detailed data for the organisation and then the, as you say, the consolidated report that encapsulate everybody you surveyed.
Yep.
You mentioned there about being an expert in market research or in responses. If it's not really your thing, if you're not really sure, perhaps even with that PDF you showed, if someone wasn't sure what that meant or what to do with it, are you going to be providing any more support?
Yeah, we have set up a process that we're going to run a webinar, which will be longer than this, probably an hour and a half. We're going to set that up for a maximum of 10 delegates per webinar. So this will be once the survey insight comes back, and then that will have a couple of us from supporting the participant organizations, trying to understand how to get the most out of that data and how to use it appropriately. Okay,
great. Another question that's come up, would it be possible at this point, before it kicks off, to see any of the questions to get an idea what's going to be included?
Yeah, I think we're getting this question from most participating organisations. We're just coming to the conclusion of getting the base survey done now, the B2C and the B2B version, so to consumers, to businesses. We've then got to fine-tune the variant copy, whether it's going to membership organisations, not-for-profits, and so on. Every organisation, I think most organisations would want to see a copy of the survey before it goes. So I think that becomes then part of the direct relationship of engaging with us, and then we can share that information.
Okay, great. And what if there's so much great information that organisations would like to do another way? They'd like to see more in another 3 months or 6 months?
I'm probably, this is webinar number 4 we've done. I think I'm answering this slightly differently with each one because time passes. Even every 2 days makes a difference. So the first webinar I said we're trying to focus entirely on wave 1. And then we'll deal with wave 2 when we've got the data from wave 1. But everybody's saying, what does wave 2 look like? So we're starting to think about that now. So I think that's a direct engagement. We haven't set up that service. It will be dependent upon the participating organisations and what the shape of the data looks like.
Okay, another question here is, what are your timelines? So if somebody just wanted to think about it for a couple of days, or they couldn't, mobilise somebody at their end to work on it for a few days or week or something, what's the timeline for getting started?
That should be fine. There is a time. We think there's important window for this. So the velocity is quite high on going from kicking it off to getting it out there. We'll have our first surveys out this week. We'd like to get the bulk of the wave 1 out next week if possible. I think we might end up drifting into the week after that because there's a lot of organisations with different protocols to work through. So I think that hopefully should give everybody who we're talking to at the minute enough time to set up what they need to.
Okay, great. So I think this is probably the last question. So everyone who's joined us, final chance, because there's one more here to ask. So if you did want to send something through, please do. But the last one that I have at the moment is, if someone does want to participate, what kind of information or resources will you be able to share with them at this point?
We have just set up a 2-page, this is what happens, 5 stages in the process. So what happens pre-survey, what happens launching survey, what happens whilst the survey is in field, what happens when you receive the analysis, and what happens when you receive the consolidated survey. So and there are not a lot of tasks for the organisation to do. So that's available. As I said, we will share survey content once we've finalised that for participating organisations.
Okay, sorry, Stephen, I'm going to have to keep you a few minutes more because I do have some more questions. Apologies to the attendees where I hadn't seen your questions earlier. So one here as well. Who owns the data? Are respondents anonymous?
Yeah, so respondents are anonymous. It's treated as a market research exercise, so we can't report back who said what. Each organisation owns their organisation's data. So the consolidated report that comes out will be shared throughout the community of participating organisations.
Great. And then I think this probably is the final one. Slightly similar to one we asked earlier, but perhaps no harm in going over it again. Is there a time scale for organisations to decide whether to proceed or not?
I think the window of the next 2 weeks is probably realistic. At the minute, the majority of participating organisations are UK-based, so we're kind of being influenced by government policy in terms of time windows, and there's a mid-May or second week of May decision on the government about what to do with the extension of the lockdown. I think that will change people's behaviours and responses, so we really want to out before that happens. There's an international element to it as well. We're talking to a number of other regions which obviously have very different frameworks for exit planning. So I'd like to think that we can continue conversations over the next 2 weeks, Sue, and then after that it'll be a kind of an individual conversation, and we'll see what we can do.
Great, thank you. And I promise that really was the last one. So thank you for answering all the questions, and thank you to everyone who joined us as well for your questions. Before we wrap up today, we are going to pop up a final survey question for our audience. So if you wouldn't mind, please answering that as well. We really would appreciate it. Just to summarise, if you are interested in taking part, then please do get in touch via the email 2020impact@oomphagency.com, and that's 2020 in numbers, so 2020impact@oomphagency.com. You can also find more information on the contact section of the oomph website, which is oomphagency.com. As Stephen mentioned, you'll also receive an email with a follow-up with these details as well. So thank you, Stephen, for your time this afternoon.
Thank you, Sue.
And thank you to everybody that joined us, and we really appreciate your interest, and have a great afternoon. Thank you.
Everybody, have a good day.